Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today's episode number 136 and the next installation of the M&A Series. So today we are talking to two founders of two separate companies that have become one. Xiao Wang, who is the CEO and co-founder of Boundless Immigration, which is an immigration business that started here in California with family-based immigration a handful of years ago, and has grown to be one of the largest immigration firms in the country, in the world, doing all sorts of work. They've been on the show, and Xiao's been on the show before to talk about not just his business, but their prior acquisition of a company called Bridge that does employment-based immigration. So really, really exciting stuff and a lot of continued growth for Xiao. And then we have Hanna Asmussen, who is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Localyze, which effectively does European inbound immigration, similar type of company, a venture-backed business that helps individuals and companies with their immigration into various parts of Europe. And so in this conversation today, we're going to first start with talking to Hanna and how she got started and built the company, and sort of what Localyze did, and then we're going to bring in Xiao and talk about that experience and journey of the acquisition and how how that all transpired, and of course what the business now, what Boundless now is excited about, and what they're both excited about moving forward, having this European aspect now to the business. I'm Roman Zelchenko. I'm a former immigration lawyer, and I'm now the CEO and co-founder of Laborless, which is an immigration tech company that focuses on H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, digital marketing agency for the immigration and mobility industry, and of course, which brings you this show. Before we get started, I just want to say a quick thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, DocketWise. I feel like I'm throwing out a million different company names here, but 8 a.m. DocketWise. For those immigration practitioners that don't know, DocketWise is an end-to-end immigration case management platform that provides best-in-class immigration forms, customizable questionnaires, tons of integrations, including with my business, Laborless. They have great customer service. Really, what I love and appreciate about DocketWise is how much value they create for the industry. So it's not just a product, but they have an ebook, they have a blog, they have a podcast. They support things like this show to help hopefully bring information to the industry. So if you are an immigration practice in the U.S. interested in or just looking around and considering an alternative immigration case management platform, please check out DocketWise at 8am.com/DocketWise, or check out the link in the show notes. Okay, so without further ado, Hanna, we're going to start with you here. And thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited to talk to you. Xiao is hanging out backstage, and we'll bring him in just a little bit when we get there. But for now, Hanna, thank you so much for being here, and I'm excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And I know it's evening time for you in Germany on a Friday
Cold,
evening.
dark northern Germany. It's been dark like for 3 hours almost. No, not as bad, but yeah, it's
So depressing. I will say before we get started, the one thing I do love about when it gets dark early is you get this feeling that the day is over, and then you look at the time and it's 4:45, and you still have so much time left. And I do kind of like that, but I do miss the sunlight. But anyway, I love to start these episodes kind of learning a bit more about the guest, right? So we will get to Localyze, we'll get to how that started, but I think it's really interesting to learn about the person, your background, a little bit of, your career, your education, who you are, right? Because I think we think it doesn't matter too much, but then when we start to connect the dots and look backwards, it always makes perfect sense that you are the person to start, the business that you started. So you're born in Germany, raised in Germany, right? Tell me a little bit about, did you grow up around kind of business owners? Was that ever a dream of yours, or were you kind of like a good student and you put your head down and did work and we're going to go on a traditional career path? Like, who is Hanna as a kind of a young girl?
Yeah, I'll try and keep it short. But yeah, it's probably a bit of an interesting backstory. Business owners, kind of, because I grew up on a farm. So like my dad is a farmer. Which yeah is it's a business unit in its own. My mom is a teacher, and I grew up in a tiny village, so like as far away from like the international world, so to say, as you can think of. Even though I grew up 5 minutes from the Danish border, so like we
Mm.
live like in a border region. We that part like belonged to Denmark for some time. That's why I like also have a Danish last name. And crossing a border, even though it was like just between like Germany and Denmark, like was always like something natural when you wanted to like have a better hot dog, for example. But yeah, it was not that like I moved around that much when I was younger, but like somehow I feel like I got that urge quite early on. And like when I was 15, I decided to do a year abroad in Argentina. That was a school exchange, super interesting because I again like ended up in the middle of nowhere. Had to learn Spanish, which was great, and I think like that like really sparked my interest in exploring the world further.
What can I ask you? Because 15 years old to go on, to do a year abroad is, I definitely was not making those decisions at 15 years old. I just wanted to go play basketball after school, play some video games. I mean, the idea of me personally wanting to go around to a different country, different part of the world. Did your parents drive that? I mean, did they recommend it, or was this really of your own volition and you thought this would be a good idea?
Yeah, my parents were not so happy about it. It's a bit
Okay.
funny, like also now, like thinking about it retrospectively, and also honestly, like now I get them. Like I had a baby last year, and like now thinking about like sending her to Argentina like 14 years does not make me happy. But it was funny. We had there was a guy a couple of years older than me in school, and like he went to
Mm,
Thailand, and like he just did that speech like in front of the school, like where he talked about this exchange, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
mm,
And I think like a lot of people went to like to France or some like even to the US like for half a year, but I wanted like something different.
mhm,
And there was also like something, of course, German bureaucracy. It's always like hard. Like when depending like when you go in the school year, you're like more or less likely to like have to repeat a year. I didn't
mhm,
want to do that. And so it was more convenient to like actually go somewhere in the southern hemisphere, because then you
mhm,
have like half a year before you like enter like the last years of school. And then I didn't really care where, like Australia and New Zealand was like very expensive. So it was like I could go to Argentina, South Africa. I think like Thailand was like even on there as well. And then in the end, like the organization basically chose for me, and like also said that because I grew up like in a village, they didn't want to send me to Buenos Aires. So I ended up like it's literally like the middle of the country, like 30,000
wow.
inhabitants. It was a great experience.
Wow. And you did not know any Spanish going into it. So you showed up 15 years old, you immigrated for the year, don't know the language. The only thing that's familiar to you is it's a relatively small town.
Yeah, and I think like also that was like not going into the details of like how old I am, but like that was kind of like before the like mainstream internet. So like there was an
Mhm,
internet cafe in town, but like
mhm,
one, and like definitely no phones with internet, and like no standard like internet at home. So once per week I could have like an hour to use MSN Messenger and like talk to my friends and my family. And
wow.
I also literally like had a dictionary. So like when I wanted to like talk, I had to like look up every word in the dictionary. But it makes it really quick. So yeah, it was probably the best, like the most efficient way to learn a new language.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. And so you went to school there, 15 years old. Do you feel, just from a standpoint of kind of the people around you, obviously you're different, you're an outsider, and this is not, Buenos Aires where they're used to immigrants. Were people accepting of you? Were they kind to you, or were they kind of, did they make you feel like a sort of, an outsider? Do you remember?
Yeah, honestly, it was only positive. And
Wow,
well,
amazing.
like let's say 99% positive. I was a bit of a I appeared like in the radio, in the newspaper, and like so
Wow.
that I was like definitely a bit exotic. and people were super nice. Like the hospitality, just like how welcoming people are. I think like also like family and friends just like play like a huge cultural factors, and that's why from that perspective was great. The only negative factor back then was like that there was still a, because of course like with Germany's past, like that was like still something like that you were presented with quite directly, and like in our, like people did not have that much of a filter, and like as a 15-year-old that was just like something like having to like navigate that was
Hmm.
not easy. But like otherwise I really have to say 99% was extremely amazing, shaped me in a super positive way, so I'd always
Hmm.
do it again.
Yeah, I mean that's so wonderful because so many, immigration is hard, whether you're 15 or 55, just moving to a new place, and
Yeah.
I wonder, just thinking out loud, if moving to a small town like that is actually better than to a big city, because in a big city, no one will pay as much attention to you, and here, you're obviously a young person, and so they're hopefully will want to take care of you and help you out. That's
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, that's interesting. So you went back, obviously back home to Germany. You finished your high school. You went on to university. Now, did you want to do anything with, it's international related? I mean, this is such a powerful experience for a young person. It can shape the way you think and how you think about the future. What did you kind of go into university wanting to do? Because I know you ended up having a career that was somewhat international before you started Localyze, but is that what you were thinking right up front?
Not really. It's also sometimes like hard to think back, because of course like in the end like it all falls into place.
Hmm.
I think in school I always like had the issue that I liked a lot of things and I was like generally good at everything, but like not a superstar at, like one thing. So like it was clear that that was like my path. I was like sucked at art. Like that was like never. I have a terrible handwriting. I'm not an artist. I also cannot sing. So like, and I'm not super sporty. But like everything else was like kind of like okay. So I did like science. I did like economics. And then I was rather, wasn't too decided on like what I wanted to do, and so I chose like something that was a mix between engineering and business, and with focus on renewable energy. But like it
Hmm.
was a bit random. I think my brother had, like studied something similar. It was like considered something that still allows you to like do a lot with it afterwards, and then actually my brother ended up like working in development aid for quite some time. He lived in Laos for 7 years.
Hmm. Wow.
And he's about like 10, 11 years older. So like that was like also why I was like still studying. And so then that was actually something that I became super interested in. Like because I loved Latin America, I always wanted to go back, was like studying something with like renewable energies. And like then I kind of like got into that field of like um, doing like renewable energies abroad, also adjacent to development aid. And so I kind of like also initially ended up in development aid, worked abroad. That was like all still during university. Um, but I think like then, yeah, I just like decided to leave that field because it was tough to work between like two governments. And I
Hmm.
think like realizing like how much like that sometimes like limits like the impact that you can actually have. But otherwise, super interesting field.
Do you think your brother, I was just thinking about this as you're sharing, do you think you and your brother, I mean, given that you kind of grew up on a farm and you had that experience, were more drawn to something, that supported rural communities in other parts of the world? Because you knew what that was like in Germany, but, versus a big city person trying to step into a rural community, they don't think that way. They didn't grow up that way. I
Yeah.
wonder if that shaped you guys a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like definitely what shaped us, like because both our parents, like my dad has been a mayor of like our small-ish village, but
Mm.
like has done that for like 30 years, and it's more like a side, like it's not a full-time job. Like you do that on the
Mhm.
side. It's more like voluntary work. And they always like did a lot locally, and so I think like that's definitely something that we got. And like
Mhm.
my brother also did the now he actually like took over our farm, so like he also did
Wow.
there's like a vocational training that you do in like Germany, for farming, and like he did that before he studied. And so like in Lao he actually was working in like development aid with like focus on farming, which
Mhm.
is super interesting. But yeah, we both have like weird career paths. So I think like it's just that we generally we love to have like some degree of like independence. We also love to like work abroad and like do different things. And so I think like there it's like kind of like both managed to do that in like very different ways.
So I know after at university, after your bachelor's, you went on to get your master's degree as well. So you kind of focused on engineering and development, kind of environmental sustainability, which overlaps with development. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you spent some time in Shanghai, in China. You went for an internship. You also did an internship. Where else abroad?
Dominican Republic, which sounds
Dominican
more fun
Republic.
than it actually was.
Right. You were not in a resort the whole time.
No,
Yeah.
unfortunately not. Yeah, no, I in China I worked at the Chamber of Commerce. They had like a green energy and a green building sector, which was also very, very interesting. To like see that was like more. It was interesting because like that was of course like more of a connection to like also businesses.
Mhm.
And both were like stations that I really enjoyed. One was at a like wind energy like project planning company, and like just learning how I think like also the kind of like cultural aspects like really play a role like in business, and like how they influence like how people are doing business, like what is possible, what not, the complexities. And I think like also the of course like I had like my personal integration like when I moved
Mhm.
somewhere and like had to organize everything, but like then also learning like how is business done. And I think like then also because I often worked with companies that like came from abroad and settled in another country, also like learning about like the challenges that they encountered. I would say like that was like those are like my first real like touch points with the challenges of like immigration and like people moving, and like the those aspects that you also get like through globalization, like companies being more and more international.
And so tell me a little bit about, because that makes sense with the work you're doing, but the practical aspect of you moving. I mean, let's think about it. You eventually ended up building a business that helps people
Yeah.
relocate internationally, and you had that experience. Maybe at 15 years old, you probably didn't have to deal with too much. I mean, you were a child, you were teenager, but now you're doing these programs as a university student. You're traveling to China. You're traveling to Dominican Republic. Um, what was the immigration process like? Because you had some experience that made you think, okay, there has to be a better way to do this, because
Yeah.
this was either challenging or too much pressure on you, or opaque, right? And not a
Yeah.
very clear process. So what do you remember about that sort of the administrative aspect of the immigration process for you?
Yeah. So like definitely the first sparks to founding Localyze that came from that time. And there were a lot of iterations like where it's also it's funny because like actually the very like first sparks I would say like I kind of like then already started like digesting like university classes, like when we talked about like entrepreneurship, etc. Because I always like had that problem, and it was different experiences. Like for example in the Dominican Republic, I remember the visa part was like actually okay, but like then finding housing was super tough.
Mm.
Mm, and I only later realized that a lot of people, or like basically everyone, like just lives at home until they get married, and like then they move out. But like shared flats and like kind of like the system that I knew from Europe was
Mhm.
non-existent. So it was I later on like found something on like couch surfing, which was a bit and yet like great, but like weird initially. And
Mhm.
then in China, I was lucky. I had again like Latin America helped me because like I had those fantastic Colombian roommates that I could also speak Chinese. That reminded me that I had to register with the police, which like I completely forgot. And then like helped me with the process because like otherwise without like speaking Chinese, I think like would have been tough for me to manage. And I think like also then I had a funny encounter with the US when I was in the Dominican Republic, because I wanted to participate in like Model United Nations in New York.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm, but while I wanted to like board the plane in the Dominican Republic, they told me that my ESTA was canceled because my passport was reported stolen. And then followed like a week of trying to like because like I had my passport and like something accidentally like had happened. But like once your ESTA is canceled, like you cannot get it again. So like that I had to like get my B1, B2 within a week in the Dominican Republic. And that was a very big challenge. Like in the end, I I was in touch with like Homeland Security, with like different like police stations in Germany, with like the embassy. I tried to like get a letter like from the UN actually like to support me, like to actually get an appointment. And so that was a nightmare. And like since then, well, like now I got a new passport, like now it's better. But like for a very long time, like I was always calling to secondaries afterwards because I had like some kind of like weird flag on my passport.
In the US.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So those are all different scenarios that were challenging. Number one is housing when you arrive. Number two is, in China, it was sort of the local administrative tasks like registering with the police that maybe nobody tells you. In the US, it was dealing with getting a B1, B2 and as the cancellations, which is really a broader relocation challenge,
Yep.
right? It's not strictly quote unquote immigration paperwork.
Yep.
These are the challenges that arise around moving abroad,
Yep.
right, for any period of time. So I know that you kind of, so I guess this idea was cooking in the back of your mind.
Yep.
And you kind of you graduated obviously from your master's degree. You went on to work in management consulting. And I'm going to start to bring in Xiao soon. He's been very patiently and amazingly waiting backstage. But this is something that you guys actually have in common. So I want to ask him about it as well. You went into management consulting, which is amazing because you get this really broad experience. You get this broad purview of how businesses are run and how to fix them. What did you learn about during that period of time that you kind of effectively took with you eventually when you would build Localyze?
Yeah. I think like for me it was effectively like a mini MBA because like I didn't have that much like business background and like just the basics of like financial modeling, like what is a P&L, like how do things work. I didn't have like any clue, and like that really brought me through like different like fundraisers, and I think like just like thinking about like financials and like how things work.
Do you recommend other people take that route? I mean, yeah, I'm curious because I would have, in hindsight, I would have loved to probably do something like that too.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think like it depends. It can be painful. I love that you meet like a lot of very smart and like engaged people. Sometimes like it's not. I think like well, consulting firms like are working on that, but like depending on where you are, it's like not always like the most diverse place. And I think like that's like something that's not easy to like see, okay, like how much of a like existing network like is there of like people getting into it. But I would like always do it again. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. It was like really intense, but I do think it had a very positive impact on Localyze as well.
And so I guess you're doing management consulting. You were at the Boston Consulting Group, BCG, based in Germany, and then PwC, based in Germany. Now for about 2 years, I guess, right, a little bit over 2 years. At what point did you think, okay, I've got this idea, right? I have had these experiences immigrating and moving around the world. I've seen some challenges. I mean, it's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to leave a great job that's paying you hopefully decent, it's stable, et cetera, and start your own business in an industry that you're not theoretically an expert in. So, do you think that, yeah, like how did that moment come about where you said, you know what, it's time? I mean, I'm looking at your October 2018. You're telling your manager at PwC, I've loved it here. I've learned so much, but I have to go and spread my wings and do something. What was that thing that kind of, pushed you over the edge?
It's interesting. I would love to say like it was okay, I just like believed in it like so much, like wanted to do it. But like how Germans are like risk adverse. So there's like actually a like 2-year period. Like when I started BCG, like pretty much like the first like 1 or 2 months, I already requested to like be able to like do a side job again, like another funny bureaucratic thing you have to do. And so like, and that was October 2016. And so like for quite some time, I've been working on it like on the side together with my co-founders and like really trying to like figure out what is it that we're building. There's like government grants that you can get to like get a like smaller like salary substitute on the side. And like because I didn't have any connections to like the tech world, I didn't know like how to get funding. So like that was basically like my best shot. But then the application like it just like took ages and like for us to like refine things, etc. And at PwC, I worked part-time, and I started like working on Localyze already. And so it was more a like gradual. I think like that's like the one thing that I really learned in the US, especially through YC, where it's different. Like it's more like all or nothing. And I think like that like risk taking is like it makes it so much quicker, because I think like in the first 1 or 2 years, like we also wasted a lot of time. I think like now we could have done that much quicker. But yeah, that's why I think like in Germany we should have like some work to do, like to also bring people like without connections like into the startup world, like without that like 2 year delay.
But it's amazing because you effectively, I mean, you graduated from your master's program. You finally got into the working world at BCG, and you immediately started working on a side project, which maybe you say is German, but that sounds very American to me. I mean, you had a side hustle from the start, which
True.
is
Yeah.
which is cool. I mean, that means you believed in it, you were excited about it, you were energized. And by the way, I know you mentioned this, being a management consultant is not easy. You're not going home at 5 p.m. comfortably, and then you have the time for a second job. I mean, you work quite a bit, you travel. I don't know if you did, but most often people travel quite a bit to client side. So that means you believed in this, and that means you saw kind of a future for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is really awesome. So I know you mentioned YC. You ended up doing that in 2019. That's after you went in full time, right? You joined YC. Can you share a little bit about kind of what was that process like as an immigration business, especially coming from Europe? I mean, you're coming into Silicon Valley, kind of startup capital. Every coffee shop you go to, everyone's talking about their next $1 billion venture, and you are a risk averse, as you've said it. German, did you feel at home? Did you feel excited? Were you kind of nervous or
I was not nervous enough. Like now, retrospectively, it's also funny. Like I think like the risk averse, like that's like one of the lesser disadvantages. I think like our non-ability to pitch is like really like the worst thing. So like demo day was like not my strong suit. But so like we went in completely naive. We didn't and like also it's a bit embarrassing. Like I just randomly saw a YouTube video of YC at some point and was like, oh, they have like great content, like I can apply. I didn't know the magnitude of like what YC actually like is in the startup world. Like completely obnoxious, like just and then for the first we applied twice. For the first time we applied, we were invited to a video interview, didn't get accepted. And we like told people around us like who actually had been like in the startup world, and they were like, oh yeah, but like everyone like gets a video interview, like doesn't get accepted. And like we got an email saying, oh, you were among the best like 10%, like you can apply again. And we're super proud of that. And everyone was like, yeah, no, they don't like really mean that. And we're like, do you actually know like what you're applying to there? And then for the second time when we applied, we knew a bit more what we were getting into, but like we already had like customers who were like a bit more, okay, like this would be painful to like actually go there. And then we got accepted. And I think I still don't know like why, because like also they interviewed us twice. We got called in again. They had like a lot of questions. I think like what we were really good at was like the customer obsession. Like we thought so much about like the problem, had like a lot of passion, like had some really good like first customer feedbacks, like paying customers. And they thought like it was an interesting take. But like then also when we joined, we didn't really know like the speed and like how people approach things. And like then you sit together with all of those other founders who like just have a very like different like speed and like way of doing things. And like it was summer in Europe, nothing was moving, like there was no chance for us to sell. So basically like even though before our revenue was like our like small scale revenue, but like was going well, but then during YC it was like not growing that much, and we were like, yeah, it's fine, like it's European summer, whatever. As an American, like you would not accept that. Like you would just like say, okay, like what is like whatever, like I'll sell to my grandma, like I'll I'll try and like solve it. And so the partners did not love us. Our demo day was like not great because like we did not do a good job at like pitching. But it was such an incredible learning. I loved the time. We met incredible people. And I think like they really like change our trajectory, because like just learning like how different things can go and like how you can like quickly pivot and like think about, okay, like US immigration was already hard. Like think about Canada, like just go there for like 3 weeks, just like do something. That energy was like something I really loved.
It's amazing because, by the way, you also get that realization of how startup businesses can be run in a different environment. So I actually really appreciate the European model because then it's not as stressful. But at the same time, if you're coming from the European side, sometimes maybe it's possible to get a little bit more. I feel the same way. You can relax a little bit more. And then you go and talk to people that are just working day and night to grow this thing. And you're thinking, okay, that's how you can really get ahead. So it is nice to see both. Before we continue, I just want to say, and we're going to bring in Xiao because it's time. But I do want to say a quick thank you to the second sponsor of this episode, Lawfully. So Lawfully actually started as a mobile app to help individuals track their own immigration cases. And they've helped over 2.5 million people track over 6 million cases to date. But actually last year, they saw that there were some people who were tracking hundreds of cases, individuals, and they looked them up and they realized that they were immigration professionals, legal professionals. And so that realization turned into what Lawfully is called Lawfully Pro, which helps immigration firms and in-house teams and nonprofits stay on top of cases for their employees and members and track cases across USCIS, NVC, DOL, EOIR. Those are U.S. Agencies for anybody listening, not in the U.S., and to help address that. So Lawfully helps over 120 organizations, including small and mid-sized law firms, nonprofits, and corporate teams. So for anyone here who's listening and is interested in checking out a tool that is specifically focused on case tracking and is mobile first, check out Lawfully Pro and check them out at Lawfully. That's LAWFULLY.com. There's also a link in the show notes. So thank you to Lawfully. Okay. Xiao, thank you so much for being patient. I'm going to bring you in right now. You have been just quietly listening, but I think it was really awesome. And, as I was looking through and talking to Hanna about this sort of management consulting thing, it did make me think about how you also have a little bit of a background in that. I kind of want to start with that. If people want to learn about you, we have a wonderful episode that you and I did. Now it's like been 4 years or something. We were talking about your background and how you started Boundless, and of course you were on the show again with the Bridge acquisition. So I kind of wanted to jump in. What are your thoughts about the whole management consulting thing, like preceding the launching of a startup, of a company?
I think Hanna hit up some of the notes, right? It's like a phenomenal training ground, which is, it's almost sad because I'm not sure if this training ground will exist moving forward. Right? Because there's so much of what I did as an analyst that you could write a prompt or an agent to do today. But it's the act of doing that, right? And it's the work of being in tight daily coordination, receiving daily feedback and like hourly mentorship from the people around you, in these kinds of high pressure, high stakes, tight timeline environments that sort of shape your ability to think and operate, and then later analyze now the outputs of our lovely AI friends to see like how they're how they're actually doing. And so, I think I'll just speak for myself, for other people, but like, it's one of those jobs that you like see as a job for people who don't really know what they want to do in life, right? But it exposes you to so many interesting things, right? Like I was working with a couple major companies on like building a global free mobile network, right? This is like before Skylink and everything. It's like, hey, how can we give mobile phone data access to everyone around the world, and like what would it take? And two things like, how do we fix like the New York city public school system? Like, and so it's like you get to get exposure to really fascinating intellectual problems, but then build the foundational tools to be able to think through complex topics.
Yeah. And it's interesting. After I stopped practicing as an attorney, but before I launched Laborless, I took a job at a company called DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. If anyone here trades stocks, they might know what they are. But otherwise, it's sort of like this nonchalant fintech company based in New York. But the role that I took was like an in-house consultant. We had a group internally that didn't solve global issues, but it solved company-wide issues, which was felt global at the time. And same thing, like I'm so grateful for that experience, because I got to work, with the marketing team and with technology and with product and with legal in Europe. And Hannah, when GDPR laws were passed, I remember being in a meeting with a bunch of product people in New York, and we had our European counterparts on the screen. And I remember the product team asking the legal team, "Hey, did you guys look through the GDPR rules yet? Because we need you to interpret them and tell us how to build that into our products." And I remember thinking, I already had the idea for Laborless in my head. And I remember thinking, like, wait, that's all it takes to build a legal technology solution? You need somebody to understand the laws and interpret them, and then give that interpretation to technology people, and they just build it? Like, is that what it takes to start a company? And that was actually the spark for me, because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the lawyer and I know the rules that I've looked at already and I can interpret them. I just need a tech person to help me build it. And so then I went on like this journey to find the tech person and build it. And so that to me was also pivotal in terms of, and it came in this sort of consulting environment, even though it was in-house. So I asked both of you that question because I totally agree with you. It's a little mini MBA, high pressure, high stakes often, but that's how you learn. You condense your learning into a short period of time. So Hanna, I know you launched, you went to YC. Tell me a little bit about what was Localyze. What did it start out as? And then we'll sort of get to how the two of you connected and how Localyze grew, and then eventually how the acquisition happened.
Yeah. So like when we started out, I think like it was interesting, like also because I talked like so much about like the relocation aspects, like that I found like painful. It was like we did not originally start out like as like we want to do immigration, like we wanted to solve people like the issue of like that people have like when they move abroad. Like my core hypothesis was like always it's like all around like having the right information at the right time. And like if you are a young person, like you don't need like another person to like show you around, but like you need the right information. And so like we actually went to our first customers and like we're more focused on like the whole like settling in and like integration aspects. But like then they said, we're not going to pay you for that. Like we need to like have immigration solved. And like also like back in the days, like 2018 in Germany, there was like not, especially for like tech companies, like there was not that much out there in terms of like solutions for them. And like we just like really shaped like what Localyze was like based on that feedback. Said like, okay, we'll solve immigration, but like we always wanted to like go a little bit deeper to like really, even if the company like didn't pay for it, like we always did like smaller things, like we at least like had like offers around like, okay, like where can you like find housing, like a little bit of like information about the cities, etc. And we're really focused on like tech companies, and I would say like really the first like 3-4 years, all of our customers were like other like growing tech companies. Started in Germany, but like because like Europe countries are smaller, like you need to like expand faster. But yeah, core focus was like immigration plus to like tech companies in Germany.
And these were tech companies that were moving their employees around into Germany, and then eventually, I guess, across Europe, right? And so, I know, by the way, how did COVID impact you? Because COVID shut down borders, but I know in the US, immigration continued on, not because people were coming into the country, but because there were so many questions, there were so many renewals and extensions. Did you have a similar experience in Europe as well?
Yeah. Quite similar. I think like then first, it was actually more like that investors were the bigger pain to like deal with, because like they like a lot of them were saying, oh, like now everyone like can work remotely, like no one will like ever move again. But I think like the numbers like started showing pretty quickly like that cases were like added, cases like took longer, so it was like more painful. Like we had to invest more time into like the processing, but we actually. Yeah, I think like their case volume, like because also I think like in 2020, like 21, like it started that like tech companies that were getting a lot of money, were hiring a lot. So like we actually started seeing like a very positive development on volume pretty quickly.
Interesting. That's Xiao, did you see something similar? I mean, I know, Boundless was also around for a few years by 2020, 2021. Did you see COVID sort of shift anything in the, with the business?
At that point, we were only family-based immigration. And
Right.
so I think what we were as the most popular website for information was that we just got in like a massive spike in the amount of questions that people had, right, around like how does X or Y impact them. And so that's what we're spending a lot of our time like helping people through, even if they weren't for a few months, crossing the borders, if you will, as often as they were previously.
I think that's such an amazing, and content marketing is important, but you think about how you set yourself up for success. You were first and foremost a source of information, right? Like that was the first thing people say about Boundless. Oh, I see them all the time. I look up. I have a question about immigration. There's a blog on it from Boundless, and so you kind of set yourself up for that. And then in this crisis, the thing that people needed most was information.
Yeah.
And you were the source of information. And so it actually, it's amazing. I mean, I think that to me, that's a lesson for companies. You never know if things are going well and business is going well because the circumstances are positive, great, but they're not going to continue that way. So it's like, what can you do for your business to set yourself up for when there is some sort of a crisis that happens, when there is a drop off in funding, in business and whatever, how can you set yourself up for success? And I think content and being helpful in a way to everybody is one of the key ways of doing that. So I think I love that as a kind of a lesson. So when did you guys overlap? Because obviously, post-COVID, Localyze is growing. You're helping businesses, you're helping startups into Germany, into Europe. Boundless, you were doing incredibly with family-based immigration. I remember you started to get into a little bit of the business side on your own. I think you were doing TNs for a little while, right? And B1, B2 kind of for business visitor visa. And then there was the Bridge acquisition, which brings in this whole separate kind of side, which is helping companies with their global mobility programs, the relocation of employees, still US focused. Okay. How did you guys both cross each other's paths as, a European company and American company now doing similar things?
I'm very curious to hear Hanna's take on this, but for us, so I don't think I've ever asked you. For us, I was like, as we were helping more and more business customers and corporations, and as especially post-COVID, the proliferation of async tools, of video conferencing, like companies were more comfortable having folks around the world, right? And thinking about opening up offices in other places. So as our customers continue to grow, we were having this issue where, like, sure, we can do any country to the US really well, and we're got you taken care of. But the moment you want to move someone to London or to Germany, we would have to hand you off to a partner. And of course, we had a network of global partners in every country around the world, but that's a fundamentally different experience, right? And something that we had less control over than doing it ourselves. And as as an American, we have both a naivete and a bias towards, like, hey, we have this massive market, and immigrating to California is no different most times than immigrating to New York. And that is not the case everywhere else in the world. And combined with, Boundless and Bridge, we had over 15 years of experience trying to dial even one country in. And so the thought of, like, hey, let's build more countries from scratch just felt like it was something that would take a long time. And so we started exploring in 2023, 24, talking to, like, hey, if we were around, where should we go next? And who are the leading players there that have the right customer experience and have the right customer loyalty and kind of the right sort of cultural vibe? At this point, we've done 2 acquisitions, both went really well. And so it's like, let's continue that train going, and seeing who's out there. And so as we started talking to different companies in Europe, obviously Localyze was on the list. And then as I re-jog my memory. At the time, though, I think Localyze was trying the inverse play of coming into America. So when I first tried, just gently seeding the like, hey, what kind of partnership thing could work out between us, I was like soundly rebuffed by Hanna in early 24.
The very direct German.
What was the rebuff? Were you like, I'm not interested, but, or how did you, what do you remember about that conversation, Hannah?
I don't remember it, but I don't remember like what I wrote, but I think like they're like it's true, and I think like it's actually funny because I think like Xiao is like definitely smarter about like realizing like upfront like that building like all those new markets like takes like time, it's like painful. I was too naive, and like because like we tried it with the US and like we spend a lot of brain power and like energy on it, but like it's tough, and like honestly it was too tough, I think, like for us to like, because like, we're still expanding in Europe, like we are going up market, like trying to like diversify away from like tech only companies, because I think like in Europe there's super interesting opportunities, like also like up market enterprise, like blue collar, etc. But then like kind of like doing the US as like a side endeavor, when you're like still a small company, is not a great idea. And so I think like for us, like also that was like a realization that I like that needed some time, and so that's why I think like a lot changed between like, I'd say, early 24 and like then like later 24, when we like started talking more in depth. And I think like also one point, like we can get like more into that like later on, but I think like really that like cultural aspect, like we did have like other companies like who try to like collaborate like closer with us or like acquire us like in the past, but like there was like clear there was not a culture fit. Like with Boundless, it was quite clear from early on, like when we started interacting, that we had like very similar, we were like very aligned around like how we think about problems, the mission, like what we wanted to do, and I think like that's like really something that you need to make an acquisition successful.
So how did that, and I think that's so important, but I want to push you guys a little bit on that, because everyone says culture fit, culture fit. What does that mean? Like, what made you realize it? Was it when you guys had a group call and you were bouncing ideas off each other naturally, or was it when you went for drinks and you were laughing together? Like, what actually, if you remember, made you feel, okay, this is a company with a culture that we align with, for both sides? Because I think that is so, so important, but people, it feels so subjective. It's kind of like you'll know it when you see it, but
Yeah.
I don't know how to define it for you. And I'm not saying we have the perfect definition, but can you give maybe some examples, or what would you say was the thing that indicated to you, yeah, there might be some good culture fit here?
I would say it's like it's definitely gradual, because like first, of course, like Xiao and I started talking, and like then we had like good conversations, like we talked about things and like also how we like saw different things, and I think like then like that's like a first step. You go like, okay, that was like not a terrible conversation, like let's continue talking. And then like you start like talking more, like you started like bringing other people, and I think like then like once, because of course like, so like my co-founders and like others, and I think like that's just like where you start seeing, okay, like it's not just like me who has that view, but like also others, and like you start also talking about like more, you like dive deeper into like topics and like actually how you see things, and yes, I think like it's like that gradual, like there's like more and more topics that you agree on, like there's more and more people that you loop in and like that say the same.
I think there's it's a good question, and with more time as a proper management consultant, I would like put together a structure and like different buckets. But like honestly, I think that there's obviously there's like a mission alignment piece, right? Like that this objective, this like, how can we help as many people as possible around the world and companies like be able to achieve their dreams, right? And open the doors to live the life that they want to live. Like, it's sort of table stakes, right? But it is important that like we're not here because this is somehow like the latest fad to like make a quick buck. It's like, no, we've both been slogging at it for a long time because it's important and it matters, right? So that's like first, and then you see the like, the way that that people operate also matter. Like, for example, we are very far from being perfect And a big part of our culture is about talking about the things we screw up on, which we do every single day, and like using those as learning opportunities. I mean, whereas like some organizations like are like shy away from that level of self-reflection or introspection or thinking about how things could have done better or so forth. Right. I'm also very, I jokingly call myself like sort of front page 95. Like I'm WYSIWYG. Like what you see is what you get. Like what is on my mind, you will know. Right. And you know, and that works really well with some people, and it doesn't work really well with some people. And it, like for me, like it was great to hear, you know, even if Hannah wanted something or as part of negotiation, everything that like I couldn't do, or anything, like it's very clear where her lines are and where my lines are, and it's like great. Like now we're not like playing this weird guessing game, but like that actually, you know, spills over into, you know, how we operate. And then like, you know, one example that sticks out in my mind is like, you know, when we met together with some members of our team to like go through some of the topics, and like, yeah, at that piece, like I think the co-founders there from Localyze all stayed at like a hostel in like a really cheap part of town. And that's like something very small, but it's like something that's very important, because it's like that is like, you know, how we're both thinking about like how we treasure our capital in a way that, you know, tries to put it to its best use. And like, so like there's like a whole set of things around like the you know, what are their values versus what our values are, and like where they've overlapped in the way that they operate, that makes it feel like, hey, this is a group of people. And then we've seen this in the month since, like, hey, like sure, of course there are idiosyncrasies between cultures, but like the way that we operate felt very aligned.
Yeah.
And then now, like when you think about from a, you know, from a tool standpoint, like we looked at, hey, like we actually use all the same tools, which I suggest that like, hey, we're thinking about how to build up our stack in similar ways, right? Yeah, I think the Localyze team is very prescient, and like, hey, they created the Delaware C Corp out of this, which also like makes the transaction easier, obviously, right? It's a U.S. company buying a U.S. company,
Right.
but it also suggests that like, hey, they, you know, are like they have, you know, the underlying structure of something that is more similar to what a tech startup in the US would think about.
Yeah, I love that too, because it also shows the values of, you know, long term. The biggest and most important thing here is doing the good job, and as you said, preserving capital to build the best product and provide the best service. You could have easily stayed at a nice hotel, and you know, maybe it wouldn't have hit the bottom line that much, but it's a mentality thing as well. I love that's a great example. I know we're coming up on time here. I want to ask. I knew this conversation would be too short. I wish I had 2 hours with you guys. I want to ask, what are you both? Because we know what Boundless does. We know what Localyze is doing. What are you excited about? You know, moving forward. You know, post acquisition, because you're now, you know, for Boundless, now there's a true global reach that's internal, as you said. You have control and access. You guys can do the exact thing that you want to do, and I presumably maybe there's going to be more opportunity from Europe into the US, because now you're getting this built-in, you know, hopefully network of more European companies. What are you both excited about with the acquisition moving forward? Hannah, you want to start?
I go first.
Yeah.
I think like for me, it's like really we've struggled like such a long time with like building out the US, because like we knew it was important, and like we put so much effort into like going up market, into like being able to serve like multi-country, like bigger enterprises. And I think like that's like where there's like a big opportunity. And I think like also with like the tech approach, like the software that we're bringing, I think like there is like something great that we can do. And so like right now, that's so much closer to like where we were a year ago. And I think like also honestly how long it would have like taken us. So I think like from a go-to-market perspective, and like the companies that we've like try to like creep closer to for a long time. I think like that's now at our doorstep, and so I think like that's something that I'm super excited about for next year.
Yeah, and like, yeah. I jokingly say like it's inevitable, right? The whole like we are going to become the leader in helping millions of immigrants, like, but I would also like to see that world before I get really old. And so like the same idea, it's like this just like accelerated the timeline. Right? Which is like, that's the fun part. It's like now it's like things I would have done in 27 I can do in 26. Things I can do in 28 I can do in 26. And so the idea that we are now both actively having conversations with public companies, with large scale enterprises, being able to service their every need instead of just part of their needs, is a whole new set of opportunities and organizations and people that we can create a significantly better experience for.
I love that. And that's the build versus buy analysis there. And obviously in some cases building just takes so long, and if you can find the right fit and you can find the right product, buying accelerates things. It also brings in a wonderful team right away, right? And
yeah.
Seeing you guys here together and obviously hearing how there's a great team fit is really positive. So just as we wrap up here, I know Localyze is still, you're running your own website still. So for people if they're interested in inbound European and across European, should they still visit localyze.com, or will there be eventually integration with the Boundless site? I mean, what do you guys think? Just for people to go if they want to learn more.
For now, they can I think still go to both, but we are we'll Xiao, I'll let you confirm more. But I think they're we are doing some exciting work there to bring it all together. And so Boundless is the way forward.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, go to either website, you will get the same, you will get to talk to the same people and get the same experience. So, love to help anyone as they're, thinking about both their current needs, their future expansion needs. The reason why it's exciting, because again, Localyze approaches the same way, is if we can use tech to automate as much of the process as possible, then we can use the best strategic people, right, to help companies reach their goals. Right, no one goes into mobility immigration as that is a means to an end, right? The end being you giving the right talent in the right place to do the right thing that you want them to be able to do. And so the more that our systems can automate the means to that end, and our team can then help become true counsel, right, to leaders, to companies, to hire managers, et cetera, around what is the strategy? What are the different pathways? How do we navigate, this, whatever tweet gets sent out or whatever policies happen? That's the part that I think our teams are really excited to be able to do at a larger scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And then having the right tech to automate everything else is the smoothness that, you want to provide. Well, I'm super excited for this. Congratulations again to both of you. I'm excited to continue to watch, how this integration works out. And thank you both so much for being here. And keep me posted. Let's continue to watch the growth.
Thank you,
Xiao. Thank you, Hanna. I appreciate it.
Have a great rest of the day. Bye.
Thank you. What a great episode. Thank you, everybody, for watching and for tuning in. It's so interesting, and I think this could have gone so much longer because there's so many great questions to ask in an acquisition. But I think, for me, the takeaways are your goals aligned? Are your visions, is your vision aligned? And then, of course, does the team work well together? Is there a good culture fit? And I'm happy we got to talk a little bit about what that could look like. What do people look for when they feel that there's a good culture fit? So thank you so much for tuning in. I want to give a quick Shout out again to DocketWise for being the main sponsor of this episode, 8 a.m. DocketWise. So again, for those who may not know DocketWise, they are an end-to-end immigration case management platform. So DocketWise provides best-in-class immigration forms, very customizable questionnaires in tons of different languages, industry-leading integrations with everything from calendar apps, payment apps, My Company Laborless, and more. Great customer service. They have a wonderful free content and value to the industry. There is an ebook. There is a really great blog that really answers a lot of questions for immigration lawyers, not about law and policy, but about how to run your practice, tools to use, where you can, find co-counsel, where you can, marketing questions, etc. So they've done a really great job about that. They've got a podcast as well, and more. So if you're interested right now in a potentially new case management system, whether you're a law firm or in-house, or if you may just want to learn more about a product for the future, check out DocketWise. The website is 8 a.m. So it's the number 8 am.com/DocketWise, or click the link in the show notes. So with that, thank everybody again for being here, for tuning in, and see you next week for another episode. In the meantime, of course, everybody stay safe, have a wonderful weekend, and peace out.